My name is Nick Howes. I'll be hosting this morning along with colleagues from the LMI team. So just give us a wave as we go around. Dr. Thomas and Marcus and Julie and Martin. And we have Celia in the background as admin and running the meeting from a technical point of view. This session, Foundations of Success, is one that we are running on a regular basis as an introduction to some of the core LMI concepts and ideas, and we'll give you an introduction to what they are as we get started. Really practical, useful ideas in terms of managing yourself, and then how that expands into the team and the organization that you're part of on a really practical day-to-day basis. Foundations is exactly the word. A lot of things you might have come across before. Hopefully you'll get a new insight on those and go away with something that's helpful to you. Just give me a thumbs up if you've seen the pre-course questionnaire and have the workbook to hand, whether in digital format or on you've printed it out. Okay, that seems like those have found their way around. That's great. You will need, in about 15 minutes, a pen and a paper, something to write on. It can be the back of an envelope, just for an exercise that we'll be doing, which is great. In terms of housekeeping, we will be taking a 5-minute leg stretch halfway through. So you won't be expected to sit for 2 hours and be on a Zoom call. That wouldn't be ideal at all. And we will do a couple of breakout groups where we'll get a chance to discuss some of the ideas that we're sharing. And also, again, at the end, you'll also be invited for a complimentary follow-up call with whoever invited you along today, just to debrief and process some of the ideas, because we go through quite a lot. And it might be, I need a bit more time on that. So jot those things down, and there's an opportunity to discuss those one-to-one following in the sort of week or so following this session. We will also send you copies of the slides, so you don't have to scribble everything down. Other than that, we're delighted that you've joined us and trust that you'll have a really useful and valuable couple of hours with us. And should also say that given that we are covering a lot to do with day-to-day organization and planning and time, we will get you out on time. Otherwise, our credibility is in the toilet. So you can rest assured on that one. We would love to do introductions and take a lot of time to get to know you. And that would be our normal routine. We typically run extended leadership development programs over months. This is a sort of short form introduction foundation session. So we just haven't got the time to do that. But please introduce yourself in the chat. That would be great. And just a really quick couple of lines. And if you would as well, I'd like you to say, if you were given an extra hour per day, what would you do with that? If somebody came along and gifted you a little box with an extra hour in it every day, what would you do with that hour? So as you introduce yourself, you can perhaps put that on as well. Okay, just give you a moment for that. That might be great. Okay, good stuff. Okay, we will get going and I will do some screen share. Just a reminder, as we screen share, you can take a bit of control over the view that you have in terms of moving things side to side, pinning the speaker, etc., making the slides bigger or smaller. If you just go up to view and play around with that, great. Good to see those introductions and the sorts of things people would be doing with an extra hour a day. And it's not just a meaningless icebreaker. We will come back to that later on with a bit of meaning to that. Okay, in the pre-course questionnaire, it asked you to score yourself on a whole load of different things that may be impacting your day-to-day productivity, how life works, the flow of getting things done and how that affects you. And it asks you then to prioritize, to take 5. If you could just choose 5 that would have the biggest impact on your life inside and outside of work, what would they be? And here's an assortment on the screen, things like goal setting and attempting to do too much and difficulty saying no and communication and interruptions and email overload and all that sort of thing. What we'd like you to do is to keep those things in mind and process what we go through this morning through that filter of how can these ideas help me in some of those areas. So that's the plan. And so the inside of the workbook has a space for you to record those 5 things. So give you a moment just to process that, because we're not going to tell you anything that you must do this morning. Whilst we've run these sessions with hundreds, thousands of people in all sorts of different areas of responsibility in industries, and we know the kind of results in these sorts of areas that people get from doing this, we've never sat in your seat, we've never done exactly your role or lived exactly your life. So it's really about processing and taking the things that are most helpful for you. And remember, you've got that follow-up meeting to discuss those things in a bit more depth if you want to take advantage of that. So we won't tell you anything you must do, except one thing. We will tell you absolutely one thing. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's also quite serious as well. Yes, interesting. Yes, I can see Dr. Thomas getting out on the motorbike. Yes, we've all been, those of us in the LMI team have been made aware of the new motorbike purchase that we're all corporately excited about. Okay, let's get into what we're doing this morning. A bit of background to LMI. It says more than 50 years, actually more than 60 years across 90 countries. And we've worked in that time with more than 2 million people. And so there's a whole host of leadership development experience, what makes individuals, teams and organizations work well from a leadership perspective. And we've brought this into this session, a lot of those foundations that enable everything else. LMI, we're members are accredited by the Good Business Charter, which means we absolutely believe in doing responsible business, and members of the CPD certification service. This course is CPD certified. If anybody wants a CPD certificate for doing this, just let the person that invited you along know, and we can get one of those to you. Broadly, the LMI offering covers these 4 areas: personal productivity, personal leadership, motivational leadership, strategic leadership. Before we can lead and manage others and organizations, we must do that first for ourselves, hence this left-hand side emphasis. Where we are today is on the left-hand side, leading in, bit of personal productivity, bit of personal leadership. Foundation-wise, so much comes in this area of being able to manage day-to-day what we do that gets our head above water, creates us enough breathing space to do the other things really well. Okay, so we're going to move on the first sort of content section, which we'll go through fairly quickly, and then we'll have some time to stop and discuss. It's called Laying the Foundations. And the 4 foundations that enable everything else to function well, whether that's running the world's largest corporation or planning your next weekend or the DIY project that you've got or a trip with some friends. These foundations are core to make everything else function well. At the end of this foundation section, we'll have our first breakout group. And the question will simply be, what's the most valuable idea for you from this section? Okay, so these 4 foundations: direction, purpose, process, and progress. Let's get into these one by one. The first of which being direction. I'm going to turn the slides off there for a moment because I'd like to ask you a question. Has anybody been in a taxi recently? And by taxi, I don't mean Uber or similar, where you pre-book it and tell it where you want to go on the app. A good old-fashioned black cab or something of that nature. Anybody done that recently? Doesn't tend. Okay, we've got a few hands. You get into the taxi, you run from the station. You're a bit busy. You thought maybe you're in London. Maybe you thought I'll walk or I'll take a bus, but time got away. The weather's terrible. You think I'm going to jump in a taxi. You flag a taxi down. Great relief. They stop for you. You get in the back. What's the first question, Rachel? What are you asked when you get in the back?
I always ask them how their day's going and has it been a busy day and what's it like?
Yeah. And what's the first question they'll ask you?
Not bad. And they always say, it's been not bad, and how's your day going and where are you off to?
Yeah. Quick bit of small talk, and then where are you off to?
Yeah.
That's the critical bit, because nothing can happen until you get the where to, governor. Where are we going? Where do you want? The purpose of getting in the taxi is to go somewhere. Where to? Can you imagine saying, look, I'm busy, I'm late, I'm stressed. Don't ask me stupid questions. Just drive. And they would look over their shoulder like, I've picked up a right one here. In fact, if you can get out of town and onto a dual carriageway, cover as many miles as possible in the next 20 minutes, that would be grand, and I'll jump out and pay you. They would think, what is going on here? This makes no sense at all. Because you have to answer the question, where are you going? Where to? And we'd never dream of doing that, jumping in a taxi. But have you ever turned up for work and it's like you've jumped in the back of the cab and your day has just taken you places? You've started emails and meetings and writing things and responding to people, and it's a bit like, where we go, I don't even know, I don't even have time to think. And that's simply, again, these are really foundational things that we're aware of, but perhaps aren't really systematically implementing. Everything starts with where to. Where are we going? What does success look like? Where, and this is not, obviously, it includes tangible measures. I was running this session in-house in Glasgow this week with a group of fundraisers in a charity. And there are fundraising targets in a business. There are income, revenue targets. But it's also when the 5 people in my household sit around the table for dinner, what does success look like? Where are we trying to get to? Or can everybody sit on their phones and disappear 6 minutes later without any conversation? Everything starts with, what do we want it to look like? What is success? How do we define that? And it's a big existential question, but it's also what does my day-to-day look like? When I get to the end, how will I know if it's been successful? Because when I put definition to that, I can take action towards it. And success is goal-directed action. So that's foundation number 1. Foundation number 2 is purpose, understanding the why. It's the question I never had to teach my kids to ask. When they were younger, they're all grown up now, but would sometimes say, get your shoes on, get your coat on, get in your car in 5 minutes. We're going over to grandma's house. And they'd say, why? And if you responded with, just do it, will you? It's what I'm telling you to, don't argue. They wouldn't be able to find their shoes and it would take ages and there's no oomph, no draw to do it. But if I said, I spoke to your grandma, she's been to the sweet shop, she's bought loads of sweets and says you can have as many as you like as soon as we get there. Suddenly, shoes, coat, come on, Dad, you said we're going. And it's this imbued with purpose. And we might be a little bit more sophisticated perhaps from when we were young and it's not about sweets. But everything we do needs motive for action. The motivation is simply a breakdown of motive for action, a reason, a purpose for doing it. And whether that's talking to ourselves, whether it's talking to the taxi driver a little bit down the road, why are you going there? I'm going to the Royal Albert Hall. Or what are you doing there? I'm going to a concert, or I'm meeting some friends, or whatever it might be. There's always a reason behind what we do. If we fail to define the reason, or we lose sight of the reason, it's not just often we have the purpose, but we lose sight of the purpose, then we lose the energy that keeps us on track. So asking the why, when I'm delegating something to a team member, why is this important? If I'm asking people to meet for a stand-up and 5-minute conversation at the start of every day, why? The question that we're always inherently asking. Success, where are we going? As we define that, it drives us to the why question, the motivation. And when we've got both of those things done, it helps us to take goal-directed action. And goal-directed action is absolutely core, as opposed to just busyness and activity. And all the organizational research of the day suggests that we are becoming more and more overwhelmed, and people are suffering burnout and stress to unbelievable levels, but we are not more productive. We're not achieving more. And so this is really crucial. And we believe in this very strongly. If you have worthwhile goals and you're making progress towards them, you are successful. And core to what we believe in and what we want to help with this morning, and everybody we interact with, want to help you to be more successful and to feel more successful because of this success motivation loop. It doesn't mean that you can magically fix everything, but it means wherever we are, we can set some direction and purpose and start taking some steps towards. This is Paul Mayer, who founded LMI way back in the day. He says, if you're not making the progress you'd like to make and are capable of making, it's simply because your goals are not clearly defined. So if we want something, okay, there might be all sorts of things we're not capable of doing, but if we want it and it's within our ability individually as a team, as an organization, but we're not achieving it, it's because we lack definition. And that's something that is one sense sounds so simple, but it can be really hard to get absolute clarity on what it is we're doing and why. In the absence of clearly defined goals, we become strangely loyal to performing daily acts of trivia. We get embroiled in stuff, we get busy, and we could put pages and pages of things on the screen that say similar stuff that's pretty damning. This one is about half of our time can be spent on non-productive work. That's 50% of the work week. A UK-specific one a couple of years ago found that 3.44 hours of time was spent not advancing towards important goals and objectives. So there's busyness without progress, if you like, and the subsequent feelings of success and motivation. So we've got those two foundations: direction, where we're headed, purpose. Why does that matter? This is important because, okay, so a couple more of these foundations and then we'll have that first breakout. The third foundation is process or lasting change. Once we've decided we want to go somewhere, we've got the definition of success in tangible terms, in intangibles, in terms of the culture we want to create, the environment. However, the sort of multifaceted definition of success is put down. Success is what we want. Results are what we need to achieve that success. Great. So what's going to make that happen? And behavior, that's the thing that's going to get us those results. And so often we then focus on, let's do that. We tell our team, we tell others, we're after customers. We tell ourselves, I'm going to go for a walk at lunchtime, I'm going to watch less telly and eat more healthy, whatever it might be, spend more time thinking and planning. But unfortunately, our experience is it rarely lasts. We keep it up for a week or two. My son is my youngest son is 17 and in his last year of school, joined a gym last year. And of course, January comes around, he goes, "Oh, Dad, it's so busy, isn't it? So busy. I might have to think of going somewhere else." I say, just old wise head, just give it a couple of weeks and see what happens. And of course, by now, and typically by the end of January, it's totally back to normal because all those people joined but didn't keep going. It became a thing in January. And we have to recognize that behavior is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's underpinned by attitudes. How we think drives our behavior. And all of our attitudes, our ways of thinking, come about through conditioning. The exposure to ideas and information over the entire course of our lives through this marvelous little two words, spaced repetition. The repeated exposure to ideas, information, it's how, it's what we call culture, it's what we call behavioral norms, whatever it might be. And if we just focus on behavior, our ability to keep going with something is very fragile. If we can build it down with infrastructure, spaced repetition is all about building infrastructure to keep us on track. If the direction and purpose was important enough, we've given it enough thought, we've got some clarity about why it matters, then third foundation is all about establishing process with repetition to recondition the way that we think and behave. So let me ask this question. I never want to embarrass anybody, but I'm going to take the risk anyway. And that is, have you brushed your teeth this morning? Just give me a sort of a subtle little nod or something. Okay, we're on safe ground. That's good. Did anybody have a Post-it note on the mirror to remind you, or an alarm on your phone that rings at 7 o'clock every morning? No, nobody. Okay. Why is that? And I'd suggest to you, it's about this repetition, this spaced repetition of ideas, experiences. Think about the hours of coaching you had, the cajoling, the pleading, the infrastructure, the toothbrush, the pot, the smearing toothpaste all over the mirror day after day till at about 14 or 15 years old. Suddenly it drops for 80% of the time. And then by 17, it just happens normally until here we are. But the beginning of the process absolutely needs the reminder. There's somebody to take you, the infrastructure that gets it going. And when we're looking to establish a new direction, to change something, to do more of something, to shift in some way, then we need whatever infrastructure it takes to build the repetition, the slogans on the wall, the background on your phone screen, whatever it might be. It's a popular book at the moment, James Clear, Atomic Habits. And there's a really good statement he makes, which is we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. We absolutely need the goal, the direction and the purpose, but then we also need the system, the process with repetition to make it a habit so that it's not forgotten about 6 weeks and 6 months later. Okay. Oh, I said there was one thing that we would tell you must do. It's a little bit tongue in cheek, but it's to do with auto receive on emails. And at this point, we'll come back to this with a bit of repetition. I'm simply going to ask, do emails arrive whatever else you might be doing. Are they arriving whilst you're on this call? Or are WhatsApp messages pinging you on your phone? Even if they're not making a sound, are they grabbing your attention? Hold that thought. We'll come back to it. So we've got direction, purpose, process. And then the fourth foundation is progress, or the slight edge. It's about looking for and celebrating the 1%. There's a couple of sporting examples. And Dave Brailsford, the marginal gains thing, is particularly known. It's been an LMI concept called the slight edge for many decades now. And it's this idea of we know where we're going, we know why it matters, we've built a process, and then we're looking for progress and small degrees of progress on a continual basis. And actually, a better term for this fourth foundation is not just progress, it's progress and victories. It's not just making progress, it's celebrating progress. Because remember, if we have worthwhile goals and we're making progress towards them, we're successful. Lots of people we come across are doing great things, but they forget to celebrate, so they don't feel successful. And when we recognize the progress, our accomplishments, it energizes that success motivation wheel, gives us the oomph for the next thing and the next thing. Direction, purpose, process, progress and victories, looking for and celebrating. And really practical. We're a really practical organization. We want to help you in really practical ways. If you don't have somewhere in your organization system where you routinely, and by routinely daily, record accomplishments, progress and victories, start it whilst you're on this call. A page in your journal, a Word document, a file in Evernote, or whatever you use that's called progress and victories or accomplishments, and you start recording what's been good. Okay, so if we can start looking for those 1%, those slight edge improvements in all of the ways that we do our leading and managing self, team, and organization, that can start to have massive impact. These four foundations, and we believe in infrastructure. So one of the things that you'll get as a resource at the end of this is this graphic, as well as you'll get it on the slides. I have it pinned on my wall just above where I'm sitting. I have it as a printout in the daily planner that I use, because it's so important that whatever we're doing, it's the diagnostic tool. Are we on track? Are we able to make the progress that we'd like to make and are capable of making by looking at, are we clear about where we're going, why it matters? Am I just randomly attacking this, or can we build process and infrastructure, and we're looking for and celebrating the 1%? Okay, we're going to have a breakout room discussion in just a moment. And the question will simply be, what's been the most valuable idea so far? Okay, before we do that, there's a page in the workbook called Memory Test. I'm going to tax your brains in a really unkind and unfair way, just for a few seconds. I'll explain what that looks like. I'm going to put on the screen a column of letters and a column of symbols. There's going to be 9 of each. So a column of 9 letters, column of 9 symbols for 10 seconds. And then I'd like you to memorize them with a pen ready. When the screen goes blank, I want you to write down as many as you can. And you have to get them in exactly the right row and column to get a point. So there's potentially 18 points here, okay? And we'll share scores. And what I should say is we're going to have a second go, and the learning is in the difference between the first and the second go. And the worse you do on the first go, the better it helps us illustrate the point we want to make, okay? So you're under no pressure to do well. Having said all of that, if you prefer just to watch and not join in, that's okay. Or to join in and not share your score, that's also okay. But otherwise, join in. It's a bit of fun. But there's also a really important point here. So I'm going to share the screen again. Marcus, you're on my screen. Just give me a thumbs up when it comes onto the screen, because there's maybe a couple of second lag. I don't want to deny you of 1 or 2 seconds because you've only got 10. Okay.
Sorry.
Go. Yeah. So just look at the screen for 10 seconds. Then I'll blank it and write down as many as you can. You have to get them in exactly the right order.
Sorry, Nick, you can still see the leadership foundations at the moment.
Yeah, I've not moved it on yet. So just give me a nod when the thing comes on. Here we go. Okay, you got 10 seconds. 10 seconds goes really quick, especially if somebody's prattling on in the background. 3, 2, 1. Okay, write as many of those down as you can. Okay, that's as long as I'm going to give you. I'm going to put this back on the screen here. A second. And you can give yourself a score out of 18. You have to get them in exactly the right place. So if you've got GAD, you've got 3 already. But if you've got GDA, you've only got 1 because only the G is in exactly the right place. So every letter, every symbol you've got. If you're happy to do, put your score in the chat box so we can have an idea of roughly where we got to. Again, I think my first time doing this was about 3. So you're really not under any pressure to do extraordinarily well. Well, we've got a 1, a 6, a 7, a 2, a 7, a 9. Yeah, all the letters. Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. Focus just on the letters. Okay, that's helpful. So let's say that you got 12. That's more than anybody else here got. This is a bit of a metaphor, really, for how modern life comes at us. Think of these as your emails, your meetings, your tasks to do, your communication, the follow-up, the client work, the project work, etc. It's all coming at you. And then, goodness me, the car insurance is due and it's somebody's birthday and I haven't gotten the card and where is it? And all this sort of stuff going on. And you think, there's just loads. And if you got to 12 with only a few left, but more is being added the whole time, all the time you're working through the top ones, more is being added, more is being added. And so it feels like I just never get to the bottom of this. Okay. And that's how modern life can feel. It's why we do so much around these kind of areas and ideas, particularly in this foundations workshop and our productivity section of that total leader. So I'm going to give you another go at this. I'm going to take all of that information and simplify it on the right-hand side of the screen. Exactly the same letters, exactly the same symbols are going to appear on the right-hand side. Simplified. The bad news is you've only got 5 seconds this time. So 5 seconds to look at it. I'll blank the screen, see how you get on. So poised and ready. Here we go. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, see if you can write that down. And if you think that's easy, write it down anyway because it's a good reminder. Great. Okay. Fewer furrowed brows this time round. It seemed a bit easier. Give me a thumbs up if you think you've got that right. You've got 18 because you've got the letters in the right. Yeah, I got lots of thumbs up here. Interesting, isn't it? Suddenly the letters in our alphabetical order. It's a line structure that we're familiar with through noughts and crosses. And it took us half the time. If we can get twice the results in half the time by organizing with repetition, with structure, like the 4 foundations and other things we're going to get into, often, and we do see this incredibly, that the productivity program that we run is 3 months of working on this stuff. This is an introduction to that, where you start to go, if I do that in the same way, if I create a process for that or borrow a process that works really well to start my day every day, to organize meetings, you can take some of that, it's just chaos, another one, it's all left-hand side stuff, reorganize it. So you've got more of your energy and time to be brilliant at what you need to be brilliant at, not in the managing of all that stuff. Okay, at this point, we're going to pause. We're going to go into breakout groups. We've got 3 groups. I'm asking you to join the room that I create. I can help do that. We'll give 7 minutes to those conversations. I'm going to put a spreadsheet up. Not everybody has arrived, but you should see your name and just choose either room 1, 2, or 3 with the person that invited you along, if that person is in the room. And we're simply going to ask the question and have a few minutes to discuss what's been the most valuable idea from that 4 foundations section. Okay, so I'm going to open those rooms now. I'm going to share the sheet so you should be able to see whether you're going into room 1, 2, or 3. I can help assign as well as we go, and then you'll see that there's a group run by Marcus, one by Martin and Thomas, and one by Julie. Okay, I will also start sending people to the correct room as well. Okay, welcome back. Just let everybody get in. Yeah, welcome back all. Always super conscious that those breakout groups, they end abruptly in a way that you'd never do if you were in a room together. You'd bring it gradually to a close. So apologies if you're in the middle of saying something brilliant that didn't quite get the airtime it needed. Hopefully it's just a bit of time to think and process, and that's really important in learning, as opposed to just disseminating information, but actually learning, thinking it through, processing. Would love just to hear a little bit of comment. And again, probably the way it worked, slightly different size groups. But Marcus, just give us a comment on your discussion.
Yeah, we had a really interesting discussion about the importance of having the big picture goal to focus on that sense of direction to make it inspiring. But also we went from the big picture to the day to day. Sometimes if we don't always relate to that big goal, when it comes to the day to day, I know when I do my job, there's certain things like expenses all the way through my career. I've hated doing expenses. I haven't always had the right mindset and attitude towards it. But if I see that as a bigger part of a well-oiled machine to achieve something, that would be better. So I think we had some really interesting discussion there about the minutiae, connecting the minutiae as part of that bigger picture goal. Then it was really good. Totally got cut off before we went round everybody as well. So never mind.
Sure. Yeah. And of course, just to re-emphasize that you use those follow-up conversation opportunities to discuss in more detail. Yeah. And I guess those expenses, good example of that left-hand side, just more stuff being thrown at you. And if you can organise and systemize, then it works better. Julie, give us a comment from your group.
Yeah, lots of really good conversation. The memory test really resonated with folks, and comments about, I've got everything I need to get things done, but I just need to organize it. So we talked about spinning plates and just we need to stack them from time to see what's happening. So lots of good conversation around that. Time management came up and finding time to get and attack everything. So that was a big one as well. And we talked a little bit about the incremental gains of 1% and how we may have the big goal, but unless we recognize what it needs to take to get there, we'll get disengaged or even abandon it. So yeah, really good conversation from that group.
Great. Good. Thank you, Julie. Thomas and Martin, I know you're a slightly bigger group. Thomas, why don't you give us a really quick...
Yeah, we had a key word was the purpose and the clarity about where are we going. And if 50% of the average employee's time is spent on non-productive work, then there must be unclear goal somewhere. And and also this memory test is important metaphor, getting clarity about things which are in front of you. Yeah
Great. Good. Just a chance to process, keep your minds working on how does this work. We like the Greek philosopher Aristotle, we believe. We don't know, we didn't hear him say this directly, but we've heard that he said something along the lines of, to know and not do is to not yet know. So we can be familiar with these ideas, and that is the concept of foundations. It's about applying these foundations throughout. You might be brilliant at this stuff, but what about your colleagues, your team, your customers, your suppliers, your various stakeholders? The more these foundations are laid solidly across, the more the building that goes on top can rise and be what it needs to be. Okay, we're going to get a little bit more into the nub of how this plays out day to day. A little bit of that left-hand side, right-hand side stuff for about another 12 minutes, and then we'll have a 5-minute leg stretch. So you're not far away from getting to stand up, move around, fill your coffee cup up, etc. But let's press on with some of this. And again, there's pages in the workbook if you want to scribble on those again. The more you write, the more it generates clarity of thought that can help you take clear action. So responsibility. First question is about, is what we're doing being effective? Is it 50% on non-productive work, or is it being effective? In other words, are we doing the right things? And you can only know that when you've got clear goals. When you know what we're trying to achieve, then I can decide, am I doing the right things? And we could tell all sorts of terrible stories of people doing things for months and years sometimes when a bit of software has been bought by the company that automates, but the person receiving that report was too busy to come back and say, we don't need it anymore. And you think, what a waste in so many ways. So are we doing the right things? That's the first question. And then efficiency is about, are we doing them right? And it's always the second question. You don't want to be doing the wrong things really efficiently. That's a waste as well. So do the right things. Can we find the best way to do them? And again, that's partly what this is about, finding and learning some ways, some efficient ways that you can do things. And there's a printed statement in the book, which is the beginning of taking responsibility of self-leadership that enables what you do to function well. And that's about accepting personal responsibility for doing the right things the right way in order of priority. choosing to go away from the whatever shouts the loudest and whatever came latest pinged into my inbox, or somebody asked for a bit of my time or whatever it was, but actually taking responsibility for doing the right things the right way in order of priority. Oh, there's that auto receive email thing again. Here's me trying to do the right things the right way in order of priority, and suddenly there's 50 emails, and they all want a bit of my time. They all want something from me, some of which may be absolutely the right thing to focus on and spend time on. But probably if that's 10%, you're doing well. The rest is other stuff that's probably less important, and we can't just ignore them. So we're going to think a bit about what we do with that. Going back to the right things, you may well have come across the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle. Lots of people have. Spending a few minutes on this is quite helpful, I would suggest. And the idea, the 80-20 rule, suggests, apologies for my rather scrubbly lines here, that 20% of our results activities get us 80% of our results. If you put Pareto principle 80-20 into Amazon book search, you'll get thousands of answers. Lots of people have studied this and broadly concluded that it's broadly true, that there are core things that we do, that everybody does in their role, that gets us the majority of our results. And we just blasé move over that and go, yeah, 80-20 or whatever. But this is huge. And we see this, we really develop this theme in our productivity program and introduce it as foundations, because if I know what these things are, this question is massive. If I can understand what are these things in the midst of all the other stuff, then that can be huge for me, because I can't change the whole world by next Tuesday, but I might be able to spend another 10, 15 minutes a day on something that contributes disproportionately to my results. It might be a good conversation with a team member, something well delegated, a phone call that heads off a potential problem or issue, whatever, just a bit of thinking and planning time. A little bit there doesn't equate to a little bit there because it's inversely proportional. A little bit there equates to quite a significant amount there. And suddenly our results have improved, a bit like going from the left-hand side to the right-hand side with the memory test. Better results generally will see a reward in terms of freeing up some time, perhaps some bringing in some more income, saving some money, that by various means, we can then spend a bit more of our time here and see subsequent results. And you can see quite quickly, we can start to have some really significant impact on the way that day-to-day operations. Think, what about all these other things? And you go, yes, they're still there, but they become less significant, or we can pay somebody else to do that, or outsource, or they just become irrelevant given the upturn in important results that we're experiencing. So we're thinking from the many activities Pareto talked about, the vital few. What are the top 5 things you do that get results? And typically it's 5 or 6 things. If I can illustrate this with the idea of the coin sorter machine. Everybody's familiar with that. You take a big bucket of coins and you pour it in a machine and it makes an incredible noise. I haven't seen one of these in quite a few years, but I know they still exist somewhere. You got a big bucket, coins that you've saved in your house for 20 years, and you pour them in the machine and it filters them with its clever kind of systems, mechanisms. And then you end up with all the coins at the bottom in the trays. All the £1 coins are in one tray, all the £2 coins in a tray, all the 2p's, etc. Nod at me if that concept is one familiar. Yeah, great. Imagine you've got all your coins for 20 years in a bucket. You've been collecting them, and suddenly you think, I need the money now. I need to draw on those funds as much as I possibly can right now. And let's say you take it to the bank, you're going to put it in the machine. There's a disturbance and you think maybe there's something untoward happening. I need to get out of here. You can't carry the bucket and run. So you take 2 massive handfuls of coins, you leg it out of the bank into a safe space, and then you look at the coins and you've got 80-20. You've got some high value stuff. You've got lots of 2p's, 1p's, some French francs, and a couple of half p's that you haven't seen in quite a while. So it's a mixed bag. It's 80-20. 80% of the actual value is in just a few of the coins and lots of other stuff. Doing our stuff every day, our activity, can feel a bit like that. Now picture it once you've put the coins through the machine. And then you've got 10 seconds to grab and run. What would you do? So all of your coins, you want to get as much value as possible. All the coins are sorted in trays at the bottom of this machine. What would you do? Anybody like to comment on that?
You'd grab the £1 coins and the 50p's and...
Yeah, absolutely. I'm ignoring everything down that end, and I'm going for the £2 coin, the £1 coin. If I can put the 50s in as well, great. And so I'm still ignoring a whole load of stuff that has some value, and some of it that maybe has none. But I'm really focusing on the high payoff, the high value stuff. And this is what the 80-20 is about. And this process, this ordering, using the foundations and this 80-20 rule to know what actually should I be doing. And you can see massive uptake. And it's definitely one of the ideas we really suggest you discuss in the follow-up call about what are your high payoff activities. And lots of people say, oh, Nick, everything I do is important. And of course it is. But is it really? And is it equally important? And knowing what's most important is really critical. And the reason, this is the last slide before we stop for a 5-minute leg stretch. The reason that's hard to do and we just end up grabbing coins is often we end up operating in crisis mode. Well, not us, other people. Let's make it other people. We're good at this, but not everybody else is. And crisis mode is doing first. It's arriving, it's sitting at your desk and getting straight into emails and starting to filter. And then you go to a meeting on Teams and then you come back from that meeting. In fact, you've got back-to-back meetings. So you don't have time to process what just happened in that meeting. So you turn up to the next meeting having done what you said you're going to do, and everybody else is the same. And then you think, I'll write that down later, but you've done 3 other meetings you've completely forgotten. In between, you're checking emails and half writing them and perhaps writing them wrong. And so you're managing lots of things, and somebody's just going to have 2 minutes of your time. And you've got plates spinning around. Communication is happening on the hoof. Sometimes a secret email whilst you're on a Zoom call and various other things. And I say to Marcus, I've told him that. Oh, why have you told him that? And Julie and I fall out because we're a bit hurried and we are perhaps not very thoughtful and kind in what I say because I'm a bit stressed. And all that sort of stuff can go on. And I get to the end of the day and I go, it's just been one of them. What were my goals? That in my head were quite clear at the beginning of the day. And I've just gone through the day. We sometimes do a shorter session on this. We call it Who Stole My Day? Because it's the feeling of what just happened. I'm a responsible adult doing a responsible job, and it felt like my day just went completely, or parts of it, or whatever it might be. And the question is, do you recognize that? And certainly the statistics, the research suggests that the UK is particularly bad at this kind of thing, hence the 50% on unproductive work. Nobody plans to waste time. They want to do important things, but all of this can take over. And what results does it create? It's 5 to 10. We'll take a 5-minute break. It's quite hard to do just 5 minutes, but it's enough time to leg stretch, loo break, cup of tea, see you back, and we'll pick it up with the question, what do you recognize that? What results does it create? And we'll pick it up on the other side and take us out of the depths of despair brought about by crisis mode. Okay, see you in a few minutes.
It's not sunglasses. I just went outside. They go dark. I'm going to take them off till they go back to normal.
That's wishful thinking, I think.
Yeah. I've got sun here now, which is nice.
No, it's very sunny here. I've just put the washing out on the line.
Yeah, good. We just agreed, Martin, we'll split yours and Thomas's group into 2. So you've got, it's...
Yeah, okay. Good.
Yeah, I've changed that. We'll put that up to recreate those groups. Well done for getting the 5-minute break in, everybody. That's becomes quite an art to fill the kettle not too much so it doesn't take too long, and just to move. I think it's an important thing whenever you're on long meetings to break them up. There's lots of stuff around keeping energy up, and certainly occasionally you're talking to people who've been on just back to back without a break, and the engagement, the value of those things is diminished significantly. It's a phrase I've come across a lot recently, which is slow down to go faster. And a lot of this, think the noughts and crosses as opposed to the left-hand side numbers and letters and symbols. Slow down, organize it. You can go much faster. Good. Okay, we'll just give a few more seconds to come. In fact, let's have a rolling start. Crisis mode. Occasionally recognize that. Suddenly getting halfway through your morning thinking, what am I doing here? Or you had a nice plan, got hijacked, and you're thinking, how did that happen? Are we on the right sort of tracks here so far? Good. Some nods and smiles. That's good. Occasionally people will say that our entire operation runs like that almost all the time. Good. Interestingly, that when we start to look at high payoff activities, it's often the things that are highest value that aren't the things that scream at us on a given moment. You must do this. This is really important right now. They're the things that we need to be proactively planning in and scheduling, and we'll get into all of that over the next hour or so. We have just a little bit less than an hour. We will get you finished on time. This is the promise. So we will crack on. We'll have another breakout group. We've split one of the groups up, so the bigger group, into two. So we'll reconstitute those. So what we do next, we'll have a chance. And then at the end, there'll be a kind of a whole group session again, just to process. And why we do that is that the opportunity to filter, to review, to process ideas, and the things that you then say are much more memorable than the things that any of us say. A lot of studies been done. You get a group of people discussing something, and then they get asked an hour later, what was the most, or a day later, what was the most memorable thing? And they'll say that. And who said that? Most often it's the thing that you said. And that's this thing. It's about clarity. It's about really being able to take what's most important and valuable here. Okay. Oh, let's just on the groups. Crisis mode. What does it create? And typically it's about mistakes being made. It's about frustration. It's about miscommunication, which then has to be rectified. It's about the mental strain that puts on us, and the fatigue and the frustration and the burnout and the stress and the overwhelm and all that kind of thing, and just not getting as good results as we would like to get. And that impacts when we go home with that sort of frustration from a day at work. That impacts our evening, the energy we have for social stuff, for the relationships outside of work, all that kind of thing. So let's think about how we can do this a little bit differently. This is called the Eisenhower Matrix. Again, it's quite familiar to lots of people. Unfortunately, it can be taught in an unhelpful way. And certainly this was my experience and others that we've got to work with as we work through LMI with people in different situations and organizations. We wouldn't do this kind of thing in our foundation session if it wasn't important and helping people a lot, because it's the gateway into doing all the other things that are important to them they want to achieve. So this was the basic kind of philosophy that often gets taught around this urgent, important stuff. What we need to do is, first of all, decide what's important, because important things move us towards our goals as opposed to non-important things. But let's recognize the things with the biggest time pressure on them. We'll call those urgent, and we'll make that list, and we'll do those things first. And when we've got that list done, then we'll come over here and we'll work on the important things that have less sense of urgency, or it's just already commented. This is typically where our high payoff activities, our £2 coins, our £1 coins live, in that stuff that we need to be routinely working on, because that's what generates the success that we want to achieve. So this is our intent. What happens? We start dealing with these things. The problem is more of these things arrive, and then there's another email, and then somebody else comes and asks something, and then we go to a couple of meetings, and then all that stuff, and it just feels like these things go on, and we're just responding this, that. And somebody the other day said to me, Nick, it was 11:30 yesterday before I even had a chance to think, and yet I had some important deadlines that I should have been getting some stuff done for, and just this happened. And what that does is that has an impact on our brain, the bit of our brain, the frontal cortex, that is good at prioritizing, rationalizing, putting words and sentences together, using our kind of best mental capacity. That bit of our brain gets tired quite quickly as we go from one thing to another. And so other things come along that look and feel just the same as those things. And so we deal with a load of those. And we haven't really got the capacity at that point to stop and think, remember this slow down to go faster. Actually, that's not important. And this is where we can get that 50% of time spent on unproductive work. And we can just find ourselves bumping back and forth here. And we might decide we're going to try and we get to there, but before we get actually settled there, something else happens. And so eventually we go here because our brain is completely frazzled. We just got to do something that is not important. Now, I've got to waste some time on Facebook, or for me, it's BBC Sport, who have Accrington Stanley signed as a new reserve goalkeeper. Something that's just about getting my brain out of what's going on and then back into this. So fundamentally, we advocate a whole different way of starting. That is a bit like getting in the taxi and saying, just drive. The day ahead, just drive. Take me wherever it's going to take me. But actually, we want to be here thinking about our goals. Our HPA stands for high power activities, our £2 coins, if you like. Anything that has the word development or improvement, upfront communication, training, delegation, those sorts of things, solving problems that keep us over there. All of that stuff happens over here. So what if we could reorder so that we actually start here? This is the base camp, and we make a fundamental recalibration of how we engage with every single day. And we say, we're going to start here. Before anything else happens, before I check emails, I'm going to sit, before I even get in that taxi, I'm going to sit and have a really clear picture of where we want to get to and what that's going to look like. We're realists. So at some point, something's going to come up that's going to take us over here. 80-20 rule applies. 80% of what takes us into the urgent, that we drop what we're doing and deal with, doesn't need to be dealt with. It's just presenting itself as that, and we perhaps could handle it differently. But let's say it's one of those things that we do choose. I will respond to that. The danger is, having gone there, our brain fires in that way that kind of gets us into that kind of respond do. And the danger is we can be into that for the rest of the day. So what we need to be able to do is, once we've dealt with that one thing, is come straight back here, straight back onto the things that we've determined are most important and most valuable use of our time on that given day. But that's really difficult to do. And what we need in order for that to happen is a pre-formed plan, if you like, a track, a roadmap, a schedule that says, where was I? Okay, that's done. Right, let's come back. The plan, the list, that whatever you want to call it, already exists. And we call that 10 magic minutes. A plan, and we'll share that, a template for that at the end of this session. A way in which, and you can customize it, you'll find ways that work best for you, but it's about making sure that handling that is always done in a way that I've got my get out without having to use mental energy to refocus and reform, because I've already done that thinking. Again, interestingly, somebody said, yeah, I just, so much of my day is like that on this left-hand side. And so great, maybe it's 6 hours, but where do you spend the other 2? And even if, remember that, just a little bit more time on high power activities, 10, 15 minutes can make all the difference. So let's clear all of those. What we want to be doing is being really clear, because we've sorted the coins. We can say no to deception. We can be more proactive in small but meaningful increments. We can be less reactive. Again, we live in the realities of the world. You can't sometimes avert every crisis, but we can gradually, by being more time in proactive, we can head off and preempt a lot of these things. And when we've dealt with them, we can get back there. Don't let the whole of life be a crisis. And then we escape by choice. It's having a good lunch break. It's walking around the block. It's re-energizing, because it takes more energy to focus. This is self-leadership. This is getting the right things done. And that takes a bit more mental energy. It's easier just to be responsive. It requires less of us. Oh, there's that email auto-receive thing again, because it's the easiest thing in the world just to respond to that, especially when we're mentally fatigued. And so simply, you can turn it off. When you're working on something else, you can turn off your emails. You can put your phone on airplane mode. You can, and we'll look in a minute about why that is so important to do. Okay, so the flip side of crisis mode is proactive mode. You'll get the feel that what we do is really simple. We don't need a 15-point plan to make it happen. It's simply easily done and reproducible ways of clawing back control of the things that we need to be in control of. So instead of getting to the end of the day going, what were my goals? We start with a plan and setting some goals for the day. We schedule and communicate. If that's what we need to do today, when? What time have I got available? What meetings have I got? I've got 4 back-to-back meetings. That's not going to fit. I can reschedule some of those. I can decline some of those meetings and ask to be sent the minutes or whatever it might be. But I'm going to schedule and I'm going to communicate to others in advance. Martin, I'm going to be working on this morning, but if you need me with XYZ, give me a call because I won't be on emails, but I'll be available at 1 o'clock. And why don't we have 15 minutes then? I've suddenly made what's potentially stressful because Martin needs to get hold of me and I'm not responding. We've suddenly made that work with a bit of thought. This is the 10 magic minutes. Plan, set goals, schedule, communicate. Done every single day. Implement. Let's go about doing it. It's not going to be perfect, but it might be a little bit better. A little bit right-hand side, noughts and crosses, a little bit less left-hand side. Jumbled up letters and shapes. Review the results. How did it go? Was it a little bit better? Not perfect, but was it a little bit better? Did I have a little bit more time on my high power activities? Am I going home a little bit more satisfied, which gives me a little bit more energy? I've written things on my accomplishments, my progress and victories list, and I'm going home for the evening to do something also that is energizing and valuable. A couple of things before we go into our second breakout group. Do you know every minute you spend planning, so that slow down to go faster, is worth 10 times that amount. You get on average, when you take it as a whole, a 10-to-1 return for stopping and thinking and planning. So your 10 minutes gets you 90 back. If he just got a third of that, a 3-to-1 return, that would be the equivalent of 22 work days in a year, 30 to 40 minutes-ish, based on a sort of 7.5-hour work day with some breaks. 30 minutes a day being more positively productive is an extra month in total. What if we split the difference? What if we went for an hour? And in our experience, that's eminently possible for almost everybody, almost all of the time. And certainly as we get to work on that over a period of a few months, you start to see incredible results. People clawing back 2 days a week, 40% of their time to be reactivated on more important work while still getting the results that they're currently getting as well. What would you do with an extra hour per day? Remember, if we have worthwhile goals, we're making progress towards and we're productive, we're successful, and that clarity, the value of clarity to achieve what you'd like and are capable of is really important. And then the last one here is about uninterrupted time and landing one plane, which is a really crucial cog in this wheel of making these things work. I'm going to illustrate this really quickly by taking on the role of geography teacher. I hope that's okay for everybody. It's one of the subjects, maybe the only subject I can remember anything vaguely about. High school lesson is typically 1 hour, 5 1-hour lessons in a day. Let's say this hour is 10 till 11. You're in my class geography. You've just had history, 9 to 10. The bell went, you got up, you walked down the corridor, you had a bit of chit chat, like we've just had our 5-minute break. The education system knows that you shouldn't sit for 3 hours in one place. You do an hour, you do a quality hour, you get up, you move. 3 minutes past 10. You enter the door, we have a bit of chit chat. I didn't watch Traitors. What about football? You stop fighting, sit down. Finally, we're ready to go. Okay? 3 minutes past 10. Okay, class, who can remember what we did last time? Feel free to unmute and jump in at this. Anybody? Oh, useless. Oh, sir, was it Rivers? Yes, Rivers, good. Oh, yeah, and the Stones bumbling on the bottom and roading. Yeah, great. That's good. 5 minutes past, we're just getting into it. Knock on the door. In comes the history teacher, Mrs. Jones, and says, Mr. Howes, can I just have 2 minutes with your class? I think, okay, must be important. And what she does is quite confusing because she just says, oh, class, sorry, I forgot to say at the end of last lesson, Battle of Hastings, 1066, King Harold shot in the eye with an arrow, William the Conqueror marches through the south of England. Bye. Out she goes. She only took 2 minutes. So, as promised, so she leaves at 7 minutes past 10. The question is, can I carry on where we were at 5 minutes past? or have we lost something? All the value of the transition, the connected, focused thought. If I'm just putting things on a conveyor belt, it probably doesn't matter that much. But if I need to engage my brain, if I need to bring my best to the table, then I've just had all of that interrupted. And the research would suggest it takes between 6 and 23 minutes to get back to where I was on a cognitive task. So even if I'm brilliant at bringing this class back, it's now 13 minutes past 10 that I'm back where I was at 5 past. And we go for another 4 or 5 minutes. Another knock at the door. It's the blooming maths teacher this time. He's got a lesson this afternoon, but he wants to say something now about Pythagoras and a squared plus. And this just keeps happening every 6 or 7 minutes. How valuable is that 1 hour geography lesson? Even if I can convince myself that I still rattled through the content, the retention, the learning, the engagement, the enjoyment, the satisfaction, the long-term impact is really bad. And I would take my kids out of that school immediately if that was allowed to happen, except in the occasional emergency. But don't we run our working lives like that and call it responsive? I've got to respond to the customer, to my boss or whoever, but it's massively hamstringing our ability to be productive. And the research would suggest, and I would put a massive at least before the 4. An hour of uninterrupted time is at least 4 times more productive. And so this slow down to go faster. I can't be unavailable all day, but what if I had 2 hours in a day, told people I'm available these times, but not these times, and I got what felt like 8 hours work done in those 2 hours? That would be incredible, wouldn't it? So there's huge opportunity here. Right, we're going to go back into breakout groups. Because we've reformed them, there's now 4. So those that were in rooms 1 and 2, so 1 and 3, I'll put the thing back up on the screen rather than confuse myself and just choose the room again. Good, welcome back. Welcome back. And I hope that nobody again had that cut off right in the middle of saying something really crucial. From each of the 4 groups, just give us 10 seconds summary, Marcus.
Yeah, no, really good. There's some cracking insights here. So the first one was around interruptions. Some of us, if we're in customer service roles, we feel compelled to always get back to people. So not switching those notifications off can be a source of distraction and getting good quality time to do some deep work. And also the importance of planning out our day. And that can be the night before. So there's a great example, somebody in the group who does it the night before and really clear on the high payoff. So you don't have to do it on the day. But I think there was an insight there to say some people are perhaps diving straight in. So plan out your high payoff for the day first before diving in.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Marcus. Martin.
Yeah, we had a good discussion. Arif was saying that he'd seen the Eisenhower Matrix before, but it's all very well knowing it and seeing it. It's in the moment like this, you think, oh yeah, that makes sense. But then it's having something that makes it your habit, your sort of your system and that sort of thing. And then Emily was talking about other people. She runs 2 nurseries, a very busy environment with lots and lots of things flying at us. So having the process again to make it all work.
Yeah, great. Good stuff. Julie.
Lots of conversation about 10 magic minutes and how that could be helpful. So that was really good. We spoke about how to carve time out when you've got a large team of people that are looking at for you all the time and managing those interruptions, and also about the technology and how we've got technology that's meant to save us time, but the reality is it distracts us more than it saves us time. And Rachel gave a really good example of a retired exec she was talking with a few weeks ago who used to sit down every Monday morning with his personal secretary and go through a big stack of paper of what they needed to prioritize and what they needed to do. And very old school, but it made the week way less stressful than it would have been.
Yeah.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah. Love those old analog routines that make the world better. Yeah, for sure. Good. Dr. Thomas.
Yes, and we discussed about challenges when you have leadership role, then often you're not controlling your time because you have to run someone else's agenda in a way. But then again, it's also your choice when you are not in your leadership role. How do you spend your time, for example, during the weekends and especially in healthcare setting where life is very hectic, it can be a real challenge to carve out this 1 extra hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're able to zoom out from a situation and observe what's going on, then there is slightly higher probability to be successful with that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks all. And thanks for participating in those conversations. I hope you get the feel that whilst a lot of this stuff is simple, we have huge empathy. It's not easy to do. We wouldn't be tackling this stuff in a Leadership Foundation session if it wasn't what is really the day-to-day challenge that enables us to get our head above the clouds and to be able to do the strategy and the vision and all those other things that we want to be doing, because the world is set up against us and even our own brains are set up against us to be responsive to stuff. So it is a challenge, and it takes that repetition, that infrastructure to rework the way that we think and therefore behave, and take some small things. So we share this stuff humbly with good empathy. In the last half an hour, we're going to go fairly quickly through just a few things around kind of communication planning. We'll look at the 10 magic minutes and then give some space at the end just for final reflections. I like to think about it. If we were physically in a room and you had a tattoo artist at the door and you had to get something tattooed on your arm that you'd never forget from the session, what would it be? It's that. What do you want ringing in your own ears from your own mouth as you go away from this, that's going to keep us? Yeah, Thomas says it's easy to think about it, but it's going away and doing it that's going to make the difference. A little foray into the world of communication, because once we start to say, I want an uninterrupted hour of time, stuff you, I don't want to talk to you, we've got to do that and engage sensibly. There's lots we could do on communication, but we just do 2 minutes here that's helpful from a foundational point of view. Me, you, difference, friction. Some people we're quite similar to, some people we're very different to. But whether it's immediately obvious or whether it emerges down the track, there's always going to be this difference and friction. And often the issues, the challenges, the problems that we get involved with leadership and with organizations come down to communication misunderstandings. Not bad intent. Sometimes that's at play, but most of the time it's misunderstanding because of difference and friction that leads to mistrust, rejection, and conflict. What we want to happen when difference and friction occurs is to stop, pause, think, gain understanding, which builds trust, acceptance, and gain. And then we can gain from each other's differences, different perspectives, different levels of experience, different ways of thinking about something, different personalities, different communication styles. And the question is, what happens most when we're charging around with more to do, with 1,000 people wanting a piece of us and a to-do list as long as your arm? I'd suggest it's the left-hand side, isn't it? And that can happen in really small ways that can be easily rectified. But again, that's taking us back into crisis mode to fix the thing that came up because the email wasn't very clear or whatever it might be. And sometimes in really big ways that can lead to disciplinaries and tribunals and mediations and all that sort of stuff. ECAS said that the cost for every person employed in the UK economy per year is £1,000 for mediation in total. It's billions in total, but it averages out at £1,000 per person, and it's usually around this sort of misunderstanding thing. So we want to build time for understanding in our communication, built around the 3 legs of the stool for communication, which is empathy. We're not just, here's what I would do, here's what I think. Empathy for the other, effective questions, and good quality listening. Being able to take the time again. All of this takes time. Peter Drucker said, nothing distinguishes a leader so much as their loving, tender care of time. Because leading takes time. Leading ourselves takes time, and others, and all of these things that enable and empower and get things done. It's, again, slow down to go faster. So seek first to be understood, to understand, then to be understood. Okay, so a little bit about communication. We can discuss that more, and we have some great communication styles, tools, and assessments. And there's various good things there that if you want to take that a bit further. Key thing, if we just go back there, is can we go left, or can we avoid going left and get to the understanding? But it seemed like you were frustrated there. What can, tell me more, or have I missed that? What, just clarify your understanding about that. What's the most important thing you're saying there, using these 3 legs: empathy, effective questions, and listening? We mentioned at the beginning the total leader and showed that jigsaw, a sister concept within everything we do with LMI is this idea of the total person. All that we've been talking about, it's easy to think kind of work, career, finances, are applicable right across the wheel of life, the total person concept. And there's a lot, this was perhaps a bit revolutionary when we were talking about this in the 70s, the 80s. It's so common, it's so front and center right now of people's understanding of what makes success in the workplace is that to do well, you need to concentrate on and prioritize physical health and mental health, and to expand our social cultural experiences does us really good, to live in line with our spiritual principles, our ethical values, to prioritize our family and home and all that sort of thing. And the simple exercise of being able to review and apply those 4 foundations in all of these areas, again, is something that's part of our ongoing planning system. Ask us about that if that's of interest. But to say, let's say in my physical health, what does success look like? Foundation number 1, why is that important? What am I going to do about it? Systemize, and then look for and celebrate progress and victories right across the wheel, because a flat spot in any area will hinder us in all of the others. Okay, in terms of putting some of that planning together, it starts at the top with the big picture. Purpose, values, mission, vision. This is like a toolkit for leading yourself, your family, a sports club, a choir, the business that you're in. Whatever entity needs this sense of purpose, values, mission, and vision for yourself. The next stage down in our process here is to create a master goals list. And the master goals list is a holding ground for all of the ideas that you might have that bring that big picture into reality. Wouldn't it be great if? And that will help us live our values, and that will help us achieve our mission if we open these new branches, if we can paint all of this a brighter color, if we can recruit in this way, if we can start a service to these people. And that's going to be quite a big and extensive list, more than you can focus on at any one time. So what we then bring it down to is a set of monthly goals and priorities, again, with repetition, with structure, with process every month, and similarly every quarter, to say, what are the priorities now? What are we going to focus on as we go from February to March 2025 with some clarity? It's Jim Collins that's quite often quoted as, if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any. But how many people do you know that can clearly articulate their current 3 priorities? It's quite rare. It takes time, it takes thought to bring that level of clarity. And then we can get down to having real effectiveness in our daily planning, being able to decide this is what really matters today. So illustrated by the London Underground overview map. It's brilliant. It fits everything together. It's a work of art. It's won many awards. And it's great. If you've got lots of time to look at without any hurry and plan your journey, it's brilliant. But if you've ever tried to look at that in a hurry, as you arrive at Waterloo Station and you think, which line do I get on? And it's too busy and it's unhelpful. So what the London Underground does is it then breaks it down and says, right now on this line, here's where we go next. Here's where we go next. Here's where we go next. If I get taken off track, a bit like that, the Eisenhower Matrix, and get off into the urgent, come back. I'm at Green Park, next station, Bond Street. Okay, next station, Baker Street. Oh, I think this is the last time we'll show that. But I think we're making the point of the challenge that we have of all those things. It might be email, it might be WhatsApp, it might be Teams chats, Slack channels, all of those kinds of things that can take us away from concentrating on what's the most important thing right now. I absolutely recommend the Pomodoro technique if you find yourself where it's difficult to shut those things down. 25-minute timer to focus on one thing, land one plane, and then re-engage with the world. So the last thing we're going to do is just show you the 10 magic minutes template. If you can see that, I've got mine here, and it's a physical A5 planner. If it's interesting to you to have it in analog format, great. We can share it in a digital format. It's simple stuff. You can easily draw these lines on your notebook that you currently use, and you can, of course, adopt it into a digital system. But what's important here is the process, not so much the format, but the process of this 10 magic minutes. It's already been said, it can be at the end of the day. you can do it at the beginning of the day. I tend to do a bit of both. Finish it at the end of the day, looking at the day ahead, and then revisit in the morning so that there's absolute clarity. And what we do at this point is we switch off all incomings. So no new messages, and we discipline ourselves to not start anything. And I actually recommend that you take the clock on your computer or on your phone. It's just an example here. You find a 10-minute timer. I think there's one there. And you say, I'm going to start that timer because for the next 10 minutes, all I'm doing is thinking and planning. And it doesn't actually take that long. And if you've got extra time, just to think about how can I set this day up for success? What can I share in advance? How can I prepare myself mentally for the challenges ahead, as well as do everything practically to make today a success? So you've got your calendars, your project plans, your master lists of all the things that are going on. And you're saying, today I've got this many hours. Let's make it a really effective, productive, successful day that's going to leave me finishing work, feeling accomplished and good about what's happened, and getting into bed at the end of the day, also feeling successful and accomplished. So first thing to do, record your scheduled accomplishments. Again, easy just to leave those in your digital calendar, but taking that and physically writing them does something else. It helps us to understand this is the time available. This is what's already committed. I've got lunch with Diane Jones. That's the history teacher, isn't it? What do I need to think about for that? What can I communicate in advance to make that work? I've got dinner at the Ritz tonight. My tuxedo's in the dry cleaners. When am I going to pick that up? Perhaps on the way there. And I'm stuck, rather than get to 5 o'clock and go, I haven't done that, and quickly run and stress about that. I can put dotted lines for travel time. Then record must be done, breaking down what we do. Real simple delineation, just down to the must do today, the A list. And if it's a bigger piece of work, give it a block of time. Because if Julie comes to me at 10 o'clock and this is the big thing on my plan for today and I've got no time allocated, Julie says, are you free? And I'm free, and I get distracted. We get into something and then I'm done there, and then suddenly it gets done rushed or doesn't get done at all. So I actually say, no, I'm working on this. I've got an hour then, or can we talk at 3 o'clock? So we're starting to take a bit more control. And not everything. Sometimes it's just short pieces of work that it's just a case of it's going to take me a couple of minutes. But by writing it down, I know it's going to happen. Second, do today if possible. The additional tasks that if those get done, that's where I'm on to next. So I'm coming back. I've always got that plan that is like the track to run on the next station. The first few stations, the next few stations, and any communication, the things that come in, the emails, the voicemails, write them down that I need to respond to, pick them up in one go, rather than doing your washing up one cup at a time, filling the bowl, washing it up, empty the bowl, come back, fill the bowl, wash a plate, just pile it on the side, do it routinely together. It's a really simple way of saying, does today represent a really valuable, worthwhile investment of my time and energy and resources towards the things that are most important? So we commend that to you. 10 magic minutes routine. If you do something like that already, brilliant. Keep doing it. Can you refine it? Is there anything there that helps make it better? If you're not doing that, then pick something up, talk about it in your follow-up session. Establishing that routine, we find time and time again, helps people to then go up the tree and start to then think about how do I do a weekly plan and a monthly plan and the master goals, etc. up from there, because you're consciously thinking, what should I be doing, not just what's coming my way. Okay, we're right at the end here now. I mentioned the Total Leader, and particularly just want to share a couple of things with you on the productivity program, which we mentioned is extended typically over 3 months, 6 modules over 3 months to really work on all of this. But of course, we've got personal leadership and motivational leadership, strategic leadership. We've got a 2-minute video to share with some people that have been through that program, not as this is now throwing this at you with an arm up the back pressure, but it's interesting to see what kind of things can be accomplished when you really work on that over an extended period of time beyond this initial introduction. If you want to have a conversation about that in the follow-up, then gives you a bit of information to be able to do that. I'm just going to stop the share and reshare it with sound. This will just take a couple of minutes.
This was a hang on, sit back, start thinking about things and start talking, and it made me realise that I can trust my staff more. Hence, I started delegating more stuff to them. Our whole telecoms operation here now is running since the course, dare I say it, 60% more smoother.
Since doing the course in my personal life, I decided that I should have a hobby, and I used the program to help me go through some different goal setting aspects on how to reach that. And I've finished some painting classes now, bought myself an easel, and I do some art, which has been really good for me personally to help me relax. And then professionally, I've applied and been enrolled onto my level 7 HR diploma, which is something that I was holding back on before. I didn't have the self-belief, whereas this program really did give me a lot more self-confidence to know that if I believe in myself, I'm capable of achieving.
Wow.
That's true too.
What the program has given me is a foundation towards my leadership ambitions and for personal growth. The program built on the existing knowledge I had. It gave me new tools and new insights.
The Effective Personal Productivity Program has been invaluable to me by helping me identify high payoff activities that I focus on to create daily goals, weekly goals, and monthly goals that benefit me and the business.
I found that the live sessions and the engagement and the time allowed in between each session are really helpful in order to create good practice moving forward.
Actually, this is genuinely true. When you're trying to focus now and move forwards, it's better to stay in your lane. It's key for me now, just to concentrate on certain areas where we're very good at and not be such a broad generalist. That's the problem. And LMI has been central to my development.
The LMI Productivity Program was a game changer for our business. We had the ambition, we had the goals, but we really didn't have a system to really deliver consistent results. And 12 years later, I'm very proud to say that I'm still using those same tools to deliver for our business. I couldn't recommend it highly enough.
Great. Thank you. Useful just to hear a little bit from some that have been through the productivity program, that first part of the Total Leader. We offer that the first time anybody engages with us on something like that. We give a money back guarantee at the halfway stage. So it either works for you or it doesn't, but we recommend it enthusiastically because we know and regularly see the impact it makes. If you want to talk about that in the follow-up with the person that invited you, please do. But do take up the follow-up, even if you don't, because it's a chance to discuss and review the things from this session. There is a feedback form that will also be on a resources email. So you'll get sent a resources email, which has got the slides in it and some of the other things that we've said that we'll share with you, including the 4 foundations graphic, etc. And there'll be a link to the feedback on there. And also, but you can also get that with the QR code there if you want to do that. I'm going to take that off the screen now. The other thing that we'd like to say is that we do offer this workshop as an introductory. The first couple of places are complimentary for any organisation across the UK. So if others that would benefit, you think they would help, some of this stuff would help them, please share it far and wide. We love the value and the impact we can offer by running these sessions, these online ones. And of course, as I mentioned, I was running one of these in-house in Glasgow the other day. Across the team, we're regularly running these, as people say, actually, this would be great to get my team together to go through this, and we extend it to half a day, and that can be really good. Okay, enough of us talking. The last 10 minutes, what would be really helpful, and we know that's valuable for you and also great for us to hear. What do you want ringing in your own ears? What's the takeaway? We've had a couple of breakout sessions to review things. What's the thing that you want to carry away with you? If you like, the indelible mark on the arm that says, this is what I've been reminded of. Doesn't have to be something new. This is what somebody said in the group. This is the idea. This is the thing to go away and look more at, or it's the first new practice to really get established. If you need to go, if you've got an 11 o'clock call, then suggest you jump in quickly so you can go and have a bit of a break before you're backing up straight away at 11 o'clock. But otherwise, we'll just kind of leave it open and into general conversation. We'd love to hear from you, though, and jump in with a closing thought. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning on behalf of the team and for the good conversations in the breakout groups and some feedback at the end. Keep an eye out for the email with the resources on. Do book the follow-up call. Do pass on the invite as well for others that you think would benefit from coming along to something like this.